Hi, my name is Casey Clifton. I am an Academic Affairs Associate in the Provost Office here at UVA Wise. I am actually an alum of the college, and I'm happy to be back working. We hope that you all will come back and visit us too after you graduate. I want to thank you for tuning into this PowerPoint, and I'm really sorry that we can't be together to have our formal dinner, which of course would be more ideal. But hopefully you'll find some helpful little tips and tricks through this and through my narrations. I have to first say I'm really sorry if you hear background noises. I have 2 kids, and again, we're all kind of quarantined in our small house, so it's just all crazy. But we're all just winging it and doing the best we can, and I'm sure you all are too. And again, I hope that you all are all safe and healthy, because that is what matters the most at this point. And with that being said, we'll go ahead and dive into our business, dining, and networking etiquette. The biggest things really to remember is that you never want to make someone feel awkward or uncomfortable. Be on your best behavior, use your best manners, be kind, be respectful, avoid controversial topics, arrive on time, use please and thank you, be a good listener, and just kind of follow your host through every step of the meal. You definitely want to, show up and be dressed professionally. You want to wait for your host in the lobby before you go in, and definitely turn off your phone before you enter the venue. Just go ahead and put it away. Once you are at your table, or once you're, in the event, it just depends on how big of an event it is, make sure to introduce yourself to the host and to other key guests that are at their reception. If you're at a reception that has a lot of tables, make sure you introduce yourself to everyone at your own table, and go ahead and start introducing on your left, and then kind of go around. You don't want to interrupt others while their conversations are going to introduce yourself. Just go ahead and wait. Remember, it's not a social event and you don't drink, but if your host orders a drink, then you can limit yourself to 1 drink. That's acceptable. And the host will pay for the evening, which is always nice. Some pre-dinner things to remember. Again, just follow your host's lead. Before you're seated, greet your other guests. At the table, you want to speak clearly. Go ahead and have a good handshake. You always want to have good eye contact while you're talking or listening. You want to wait for your host to be seated, or if they invite you to go ahead and sit, that's fine too. Don't put any of your personal belongings on the table, and that includes your elbows. You want to, maintain a comfortable distance between the table and your chair. That way you're not spilling food, dropping food, but that way you're, of course, not on top of the table either. You want to sit up straight and just have really good posture. And again, just kind of, use your best table manners. During the meal, it's important to remember that servers should serve from your left, and they should clear your plates from the right. You don't need to assist them because you may actually end up knocking something. Just let them go ahead and do it. And of course, just say thank you. So again, when you receive your plate, you definitely want to go ahead and thank your server. Don't start eating until everyone at your table has been served. If you're at a really large table, then you wait until your host invites you to begin. And then I know it's easy to kind of get a little intimidated if you're at somewhere that is more upscale and has a very elaborate table setting. So you have like 4 glasses, and some are for wine, some's for water, and then you have dessert, and you have all these utensils, but it's really easy to remember that solids are on your left and drinks are on your right. And a few little kind of, tricks to remember that, you can make a B with your left hand and a D with your right hand. So you're going to know bread is on your left and the drinks are on your right. I always do BMW, so I know my bread is on my left. Of course, my meal is going to be right in front of me, and my water is going to be to my right. Another trick to remember is to eat slowly, so you finish about the same time as your host. Of course, you don't need to chew with your mouth open, and definitely do not talk with your mouth full. Nobody wants to see you chewing your food. Um, if there is something in your food, don't make a scene. Just be very casual, very low key about it. And if you happen to maybe like get a seed or something that's in your food, just use your fork to remove it very discreetly and then just place it on the side of your plate. Some more during the meal. This is specifically about passing items. You definitely need to wait for your host to start passing the bread. If there happens to be more than one set on the table, you just mirror your host's actions. You always pass to your right, of course, never across the table, and don't reach for an item. You always pass the salt and pepper together. I was always told that they were married. So just make sure that they always stay together. And then you want to set them down on the table for your neighbor to pick up. Don't just hand them off. You do want to hold the plate or bowl or basket to your neighbor on your left to let them serve themselves before you hand it off to your right if you are actually starting the passing of a bread basket. You want to take a modest amount of dressing, bread or other item. You don't want to be the person who has like 5 rolls and then somebody at your table doesn't get one. If something is not passed at the table, just quietly ask your neighbor to pass it. If they can't reach it, then they should quietly ask their neighbor until they can get it passed. But you definitely don't want to shout across the table that you want butter or, ranch dressing or something like that. And of course, common sense would tell you no dipping food in communal bowls. So, to talk a little bit more about utensils, of course, you need to put your utensils down when you're drinking and when you're speaking. When you're in doubt, just use utensils from the outside in. I don't know if you all have seen the movie Titanic, but that was the one thing that I took away from that movie, and it really is true. You just use your utensils from the outside, and with each course, you just work your way in through the utensils. Sometimes it's important to remember that a soup spoon would be delivered with your soup. If not, then it is typically on the far left of your place setting. For forks, your small outside fork is going to be salad. Your larger inside fork is dinner. The small fork that's above your plate is typically for dessert, or sometimes there's a spoon, sometimes there's both. So again, the spoon can be for dessert or it could be for coffee. A little bit more about utensils. So for knives, the small knife on the small plate to your left is your butter knife. And typically there's only one knife next to your plate. If you're somewhere and you happen to be ordering a steak or something that would require a knife like that, they will bring it with your meal, so you don't have to worry about that. There are different styles of, I guess, technically cutting and eating. There's continental, which is when you cut your food with your right hand while you hold the food with your left hand, but then you actually eat from your left hand. But then American is when you cut food with your right hand and use the left hand to hold the food, but then you switch it back over to your right hand to actually eat. And of course, we're Americans, so we think we have to be different about that. A resting position for your utensils, your knife needs to be at 5 o'clock and your fork would be at 7 o'clock. And if you are finished eating, you need to place the knife and the fork with the prongs down side by side across the plate with the handles at 4 o'clock. And that will signal and let your server know that you are done eating. Now, while you're eating, it's important to make note that you need to eat your meal as it's presented and just cut your food one bite at a time as you're preparing to take that bite. Do not go ahead and pre-cut food on your plate. That makes it look like you're cutting food for a 4-year-old, so definitely do not do that. While you're eating your bread, break off one bite-sized piece at a time and butter it at that time. Don't split the roll, don't butter the whole roll, just butter a little piece as you eat it. And of course, do not pick up food with your hands except for the bread. Some important things to note about the soup course. The soup needs to be spooned and tipped away from you. You definitely do not want to blow on it, so just kind of stir it gently with your spoon to let it cool down. You want to scoop away from you so that you don't spill on yourself. You can tip the soup bowl away when you're nearing the bottom so it doesn't end up, again, spilling on you because you don't want that to happen. When you're finished, you just leave your soup spoon on the saucer, not in the bowl, because you don't want it to, again, splash out or make anything splash. And then the server will come and clear those away for you. If you need to step away from the table, make sure you excuse yourself before leaving the table. Place your napkin neatly in your seat, and then when you are sitting back down, just go ahead and readjust your chair, and then place your napkin back in your lap. At the end of the meal, the host or hostess will rise from the table, and that is your signal that dinner is over. At that point, you would just fold your napkin and place it to the left of your plate. Gently move your chair back and stand up. You need to thank your host and or hostess before you leave. Be brief, because if they're standing up to tell you dinner's over, then that means it's time to go. But make sure you're polite, and that includes, to your servers and to other guests as well. And then it's a good idea to follow up with a thank you note, or an email is acceptable in most cases. Remember that accidents can happen. It's very possible that you spill something or somebody else spills something, regardless of who might have done it. Just be gracious, be courteous about it, and most importantly, remain calm. Things are going to happen, but the way you handle it will speak more about you than what happened. So your reaction matters even more. Some conversation tips while you're dining include that you need to do more listening than you do talking, but be an engaged listener. Don't just be sitting there, actually be engaged in the conversation. It's a good idea to be informed and know something about your host or your hostess and other guests if you know who they might be before you go. And present yourself as relaxed, be friendly, and again, be interested and engaged. It's a good idea to stay positive, maintain good eye contact, and smile, and, again, be an engaged listener, and don't argue or correct others. Some additional conversation tips include asking open-ended questions. For example, like, what made you decide to go into banking? And then, letting somebody take that and answer. That will keep a good conversation flow. Again, steer away from controversial topics. You don't want to be gossipy. Don't ask very specific personal information. Definitely avoid politics and religion. And remember that you need to keep your conversations, be mindful about confidentiality while you're talking. Make sure you don't talk with utensils or food in your mouth. And again, don't talk across the table. Don't leave anybody out. If you're not involved in a general table discussion, just talk to your neighbor sitting on your left or right. And just keep, just a low voice. That way you're not too loud. If someone happens to say something rude or tacky, you can either not respond, you can change the subject, or if it's about something that does need to be addressed, ask them to call you at the office at a better time to have a more private conversation about it. If it's not something necessarily that needs to be addressed, but it's just probably something that shouldn't have been said, the best thing to do is try to change the subject just to keep everyone comfortable and keep things flowing. And again, just, be calm and maintain a positive attitude. A few suggested small talk subjects include best-selling books, news events, maybe some technological advances. Travel and sports are typically safe bets. And it is okay to ask others about themselves, about their families, their work, their hobbies. Just don't go too personally. Like, you don't want to ask somebody how much they make or, something tacky like that. And really, honestly, that kind of sums up what we would talk about if we were able to have the business dinner. And again, I'm so sorry that we were unable to do that, but I'm glad that we're able to at least get this out to you. I'm happy to answer any questions that you all might have about etiquette. I didn't say this at the beginning, and I should have. I'm not an etiquette expert by any means, but I have taken a few etiquette classes. and sessions, I guess, rather, I should say. So I'm happy to answer that. But the biggest things, if you're polite, if you're respectful, and if you follow your host's lead, then you will be just fine. Just be confident, be a good listener, and you'll definitely succeed. So we wish you all the best, and we are just thinking of you all in this time. And again, Beth Boyd or anybody in the Alumni Association would love to help you all in any way that we can. Just don't hesitate to reach out and come back and see us as much as you can.